session 2 out of 5. And it was requested to review the English grammar. So I'm going to review it quickly. Obviously, since you have been through it in the previous section, I don't have to go through slowly. But I want to review it quickly just to refresh your memory. And also, so that you'll have it fresh in your mind as we move on to Greek grammar, which will happen this evening. We should be able to cover both this review of English and all of Greek grammar this evening. So we are back to the same example of the text. Okay, I have a person who says they can't hear me. Somebody else tell me that they can hear me, so I know that the problem is not on my end. Chat in the chat box. Okay, can anybody hear me? Yes, okay. So people just need to get their software working. All right, so let's go on to nouns, which are common and proper. Remember that. A noun is a person, place, or thing. And so proper nouns are the names and titles of those persons, places, or things. So here we have proper nouns, Walmart. Common nouns, eggs, song, way, man, person, money, man, thing. Those are nouns. Okay. Adjective describes the noun or a noun phrase. So we have the noun eggs, and there's a dozen eggs, not brown eggs or white eggs or soft eggs or hard eggs or something like that. So eggs. And a is another type of adjective. We'll see that that's an article. So adjectives describe a noun or noun phrase. The article is a type of adjective. There's a and the and so on. We have indefinite and definite articles in English. A is just indefinite. Not the definite thing that I'm talking about, but just a dozen eggs. Okay, not the dozen eggs. But we'll say the dozen eggs after we have identified the eggs. So it's definite. The way, that's the first time we seem to introduce it grammatically, but happily along the way, it's the way because it's the way that I'm going. You already know that I am going because I said I went. Okay. Now we have the subject of the sentence. I went to Walmart. I is the subject of went. I is the subject of met. Okay, I and who is the subject of begging. So these are the subject includes more than a word sometimes. That begging man is the subject of was. Okay. The predicate is the verb and everything after that. And as I mentioned, there's some disagreement. in terms of what constitutes a predicate among the textbooks that you'll read. But this is what I learned in school. Went is the verb, and everything after that is the predicate. And I showed there's a predicate adjective. It's after the word was. An adjective is happy. I'm not saying the begging man is a dog or what his name was. I'm saying he's happy describes man. Okay. Pronouns substitute for a noun or a noun phrase. So, I went to Walmart. Who went to Walmart? Garth went to Walmart. You know who I am because I'm the one writing it. There Garth met a man. The man was begging. A substitute for a noun or noun phrase. Generic substitute. Begging man was happy for that. For what? The money. Which? What? The money. He. Who? The man. Okay, I'm down here. What would you do? You would do what? Well, I'm going to answer that question since it's an interrogative. Do the right thing. Okay. Now, pronouns can be personal pronouns, or they can be other kinds of pronouns. The personal pronouns refer to people. And you must remember first person, second person, and third person. We have this in Greek also. First person is I, me, we, or us. And you can see now, since I went over this in session 1, I is subjective and me is objective. I wouldn't say me went to Walmart, I would say I went to Walmart. But if I said you went to, I wouldn't say you went to I would say you went to me. Okay, we is subjective, us is objective in the plural. So the first person can be subjective or objective, singular or plural. Second person in English can only be you in modern English unless you're reading Elizabethan English or you're in southern U.S. where the slang y'all is used, which is plural, so singular or plural. But no subjective, objective, they're both the same. Third person, he, she, it, they, or them. He, she, and it are all singular. He is masculine, she is feminine, and it is neuter. Okay, so in English we distinguish it in the third person. Kind of funny. It's English, as I said, is not very consistent. And then the funny thing is, for the plural, it's distinguished by singular or plural. They, or rather, sorry, I misspoke. Subjective or objective. They or them. Okay. Pronouns. If they're not personal, maybe they're relative. Who? Who relates? There I met a man who was begging. Who relates to the man. Interrogative is what? Why? Words like that. So, what would you do? It substitutes for the right thing. The right thing is what you would do. It's a question, so it starts out with what. Then reflexive refers back to the pronoun. So himself, herself, theirself, itself, themselves. Possessive means my, your, their, and so on and so forth. Indefinite would be anybody, nobody, anyone, no one, someone, whoever. Those are indefinite pronouns. Okay. Conjunctions, they connect things. Subordinating conjunctions, I have one example here. Since I was wanting to help him, a needy person. The subordinating conjunction subordinates the clause, I was wanting to help him, a needy person. And it's subordinate, that is dependent, upon I gladly gave him some money. Or I could switch them around. I gladly gave him some money since I was wanting to help him, a needy person. Now correlative conjunctions would be like either, or, correlate one thing to another. Coordinating would be like and, or, but. I don't have any of those examples in my text. So a conjunction can introduce a dependent clause or subordinate clause. Since I was wanting to help him, a needy person, if I stopped there, it's incomplete. It's dependent upon something. What? It's dependent upon I gladly gave him some money. The subordinate or dependent clause cannot stand on its own. But a dependent clause can stand on its own and can be a sentence in itself if it wanted to be. I went to Walmart to buy a dozen eggs, period. I could have put a period there. But it's I went to Walmart to buy a dozen eggs, singing a song happily along the way. I should probably have marked that as a dependent clause. It's a participial phrase. And then I gladly gave him some money. It could stand on its own. Taking out the since dependent clause. Okay. Interjections. Wow. Hey. Words like that. One word. Or a word with a comma. A positive. And a positive is a noun or a noun phrase side by side with that which precedes it, and which is identified with it. By the way, if any of you have any questions that are, clarification nature, quick clarifying questions or something like that, I can see the chat window, so you can type them there, just to make sure everybody is following me and understanding everything that I'm saying at this point. Again, clarification questions only. If you don't understand something. Okay, a positive. So in my text, a needy person is a positive. It's a noun phrase. The noun is person, and two adjectives, a and needy. Modify that noun and produce a noun phrase. It's called a phrase because it doesn't have a verb, as opposed to a clause. I didn't document that in my slides. But a needy person describes him. Since I was wanting to help him. I could have said, since I was wanting to help a needy person. In fact, I could have said, since I was wanting to help a needy person, comma, him, comma, I gladly gave him some money, and him would be the appositive. Okay. Prepositions. To, under, over, by, for, inside, outside, of. These are all prepositions. I've got to and along and for in my text. Those are prepositions. And the preposition has an object. To Walmart. Along the way. For that which he was given. Putting the two together forms a prepositional phrase. I went to Walmart. Along the way is a prepositional phrase. For that which he was given is a prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase is never essential to the grammar. So, as I said, we often, in the sentence, when you're diagramming a sentence and for homeschooling or any kind of schooling purposes, I would say, I went to buy a dozen eggs, singing a song happily. Okay, and later on, that begging man was happy. The prepositional phrase is not essential to the grammar. It should be crossed out first. But it is essential for the meaning. Verb forms. These are all verb forms. Went, to buy, singing, met, was begging, and so on. Notice in the bottom, would goes with do. That's a word form. In an interrogative, the you is not part of that verb phrase. We have the concept of conjugation and declension. Verbs are conjugated. Nouns and adjectives, articles, things like that are declined. So conjugation, that's just a term. In English, it's inflection and helper/auxiliary verbs. So you can see here, this is inflection. This is inflection, 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 okay, helper auxiliary verbs. They can be called auxiliary verbs or helper verbs. Was, I suppose you could call to, verb infinitive. These are all helper verbs. Okay. Verbs can be regular or they can be irregular. Regular verbs have a root, like the word want, and then you inflect it as expected, once, wanted, wanting, and so on. All the underlined verbs in this are regular verbs. Beg, begs, begging, want, wanting, help, helps, helped, helping, and so on. Okay? Then irregular verbs change the root. This happens in Greek also. Some Greek words are regular and verbs are regular and some are irregular. We say, I went. You don't say, I goed, G-O-E-D. I do say to buy, but if I used another tense, I wouldn't say to have buyed, B-U-I-E-D. I would have said to have bought. I am singing, or perhaps I sang or sung, or had sung. So those are roots that change with the conjugation of the verb. Infinitives, you add to plus the verb, to buy. Expresses a principle. I went to buy. To help. Okay. Imperatives. I have one, and it is do. Do the right thing. In English, you start the sentence. You put the verb at the beginning. You capitalize it. And you omit the subject. The subject is assumed to be you. So it's you. Do the right thing. Since in English, an imperative is always addressed to the listener, not a third person, and never yourself, I suppose you don't need the you. In Greek, you will find that you can have imperatives in the second and third person, and we'll describe them when we get there. Transitive verbs take an object. So a transitive verb is a question in the chat. Since I was wanting to help, I'm just addressing the chat, help him, a needy person, I gladly gave him some money. And she says to avoid having one word twice, him in a sentence. Yeah. I'm not quite sure I understand that. So hold that thought, and then ask. I'll do a Q&A at the end here when we get done with the English review. Okay, transitive verbs. Getting back to that. Transitive, trans is Latin for change or across. So you go, you buy eggs. Buy. Buy is the verb. What do you buy? You buy the eggs. Okay. They take an object. Singing a song. Met a man wanting to help him, and so on. Okay? Indirect object you could have. So in this case, I've got gave is a verb. The object of gave is money. Okay? I gave money. Him is an indirect object. I gave him some money. I did not give him, as if I could take him and give him to somebody. I gave him some money. And as I said, you could rephrase this using a prepositional phrase. I gladly gave some money to him. Intransitive verbs, however, do not take an object. I went. Well, I just went. Remember that you can cross out the to Walmart. That doesn't matter because that's a prepositional phrase, right? And then this is an infinitive, right? We usually, in our grammar regimen, we put parentheses around an infinitive. And I went to buy, and then to buy refers to eggs. Okay, so this went doesn't have an object. I just went. I could put a period. I could have put a period there, okay, and finish the sentence. I went. Same with a man who was begging. But I could use that verb as a transitive verb. I begged money. But I'm not using that there here. Okay. Was is an intransitive verb and is also a linking verb in this case. Notice in the last case, was is not a intransitive verb. Was is a helper verb to forgiven. Okay, so that begging man was happy. And as I diagrammed yesterday, it's linking because you can just put an equal sign here. The begging man is equated to the adjective happy. I could have said happy was the begging man. I could switch them around and it would not make any difference. Linking verbs can, the predicate here is a predicate nominative and a predicate adjective. So nominative is the case, adjective is the part of speech. Participles are very important. Make sure that you understand. When I turn to Q&A, if you do not understand, please ask me to clarify. Verb participles. They usually take no subject, and they usually act like an adjective, well, almost always. Sometimes it can be a noun in Greek. In English, verb participle is always an adjective, and it's called a gerund if it's a noun. Acts like a noun. Okay, so I went to Walmart to buy a dozen eggs. Singing. Sing is a verb. It does not have a subject. I didn't say I was singing. I just said singing. Singing. That begging man. So singing and begging are participles. Notice in begging, that is not the subject. I'm not saying he was begging. I'm saying that what? That man. What kind of man? A begging man. That's a participle. Participial phrase is the participle and what it contains associated with it. Singing. Singing what? Singing a song. Singing how? Singing happily. Singing where? Along the way. Begging man would be the participial phrase in the second instance. Adverbs. They modify a verb, an adjective, another adverb, describing how, in what way, when, where, and to what extent. So here, happily is not describing the song. Happily describes how I'm singing. The adverb there is where I met him. And gladly describes my giving. Adverbs, as contrasted to adjectives. Remember, adjectives modify a noun. Notice that adverbs can also modify an adjective. Okay. Declension. Remember, we talked about conjugation of verbs. Declension is the inflection in the spelling of nouns, pronouns, adjectives, and articles to indicate case, person, number, and gender. In English, the two cases are subjective and objective. So, for example, I would be subjective, but me, referring to the same person, would be objective. He would be subjective, him would be objective, who would be subjective, whom would be subjective. And so you see how I've declined. I didn't say me went to Walmart. I didn't say me went to Walmart's. I didn't say I went to Walmart to buy an dozen eggs or a dozen's egg. That's declension. Singing a song, not an song. Singing a song, not songs, a songs. Okay, that's declension of nouns. And then with that, we have the English verb conjugations again. So the verb conjugations I've illustrated again in this with a grid of 3 by 4. And there's past, present, and future on the columns, and then the rows are simple, continuous, perfect, and perfect continuous. Now we call the past, present, and future time or tense. We call the columns simple, continuous, perfect, and perfect continuous aspect. Okay, so that, yes, tense loosely refers to both time and aspect, but kind of specifically to time. And this is going to be an important distinction because Greek does things a little bit differently, or at least there's a different emphasis. So, for example, we have, let's start with past, the verb loose. I loosed, but continuous would be past tense and continuous aspect. I was loosing. Or I had loosed. So it's in the past, but completed in the past. Or perfect continuous. I had been loosing. Okay, and then we look at the distinction between active and passive. Active means you're loosing something. Well, passive means you were being loosed. Okay, so loosed or was loosed. Active means the subject is doing something to something else. Passive means the subject is being done unto. Okay, so then if we move to present time, the same things apply, as well as future. So if I go to the opposite corner here, future, perfect, continuous. Will have been loosing. So the will makes it future. Have been, well, have makes it something that's completed, but in progress, the been part. If you can get that. This is English, so that's why I focus on the English first, so that you can understand the concepts. Then you see the imperative, infinitive, participles coming in. And notice that in English, it's not a perfect grid. You don't have, for example, a future participle. You don't have a past imperative. Of course, you could not have a past imperative because you can't command something to be done in the past. So hopefully this summarizes the English verb conjugations. Okay? And then that's the rest, that's the completion of review of English. We spent 40 minutes doing this, and I'm going to change it to question and answer so that you can ask some questions. So why don't you go into the queue? I assume that Prudence and Lou will both do that. Okay. I'll just go by the queue. No, actually, I'll go since Prudence asked first. I'll address her. Okay, so Prudence, you are live. Can you ask the question, Prudence?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, the question was, was that if I were writing like in an essay or a document, a formal document, I would try to use, not to repeat him in one sentence. So this is for the speaking. I think the speaking would be okay, but I was wondering when you are writing like an essay, I would say, since I was wanting to help a needy person, I gladly gave him some money.
Oh, okay. So your point is just that I don't need the first him.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, the next is Lou. You had a question. What about conditional, or is that only in Greek? I don't quite understand the...
So there is, and I don't know if it's tenses or what, but when there's conditional sentences, or I think at least in Spanish there's like a conditional tense or something like that that at least in Spanish we have it, but I don't know in English. And I know from reading some stuff in Greek, that there's three or four different types of conditionals and stuff, and I don't know how that that applies in the in English, or if that's not present.
Right. So in English, we don't have a verb conjugation that expresses a conditional. You would express a conditional with another word like if.
Okay.
Or depending on, or something like that. So if I went to Walmart to buy a dozen eggs, I would sing a song or something like that. So the word if would make it a conditional phrase.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. All right, good. Nobody else? You're all just all ready to go into the next section. That's great. Okay. You all ready for Greek? Don't all say yes at once. This is what we've been waiting for. Okay, so the first thing is we have in English grammar a formal way of writing things. And I want to emphasize that when we're speaking in English or writing in English, there is a formal way or a style, a proper way of expressing things. I cannot emphasize enough that English is not the standard by which all other languages are judged or measured. Other languages do things differently. If you learn that other language, then you get used to talking the way they talked in another language. So, to start to introduce this concept that when you start reading Greek, it's going to look awkward. And the first thing you'll say, well, I'm not translating this right. No, you're translating it just fine because that's the way they talked, okay? So, for English grammar, formal, I went to Walmart to buy a dozen eggs, singing a song happily along the way. There I met a man who was begging. Since I was wanting to help him, a needy person, I gladly gave him some money. That's the example that we've used. But, for example, we have a colloquial, that is a manner of speaking, used in informal conversation, but not written way of saying this. So let's suppose that we are having a conversation, and I've even started to, by saying we are having, okay. I've already started to betray the point here. So I go to Walmart to buy a dozen eggs. Now I'm singing a song happily along the way. And there I meet a man who's begging. And since I'm wanting to help him, since he's a needy person, I'd gladly give him some money. Okay. I could talk to you like this, So I'm at the Walmart, I park my car, and I get out of the car, and there's this man. And, I didn't know who he was, but, I was singing a song, I don't know who he is, but I meet this guy, and he's begging. It's like, I'm thinking to myself, what do I do? Oh, thanks, I'm not Q&A lecture yet. So, notice I'm using the present tense, okay? But I'm talking about something in the past. You know that it's in the past because I'm standing here talking to you, okay? And we're not in front of a Walmart, and the man is not there, okay? But I'm using the present tense. Okay, so this is how stories and historical narratives are formally expressed in Koine Greek. In other words, this is the proper way to express a story or a narrative, a historical narrative. most of the Bible is narratives about things that happened. At the time of writing, they were in the past, but they were expressed as if the writer was there in the past, but speaking in the present. And I'm just showing that informally we do this in English. So how would we say the same thing in Koine Greek? Now, before we do that, I want to point out some conventions that I use. And one is that it's in the little box, here, that I'm going to use square brackets to denote a word or phrase that's not in the original language. I'm going to use a dash to connect two English words that come from one Koine Greek word. Okay. And I'm going to use a slash to show two different English words that would be two alternative renderings of the same Greek word. Okay. So here I say, I go. That is going to be one Greek word. Eilthon. Eilthon. This is the inflection, the conjugation of the verb that includes the word I, because the verb is conjugated such that it is first person, not second person, third person. So there's an implied I in here. Okay. But those two words are together. Okay. Now the other thing is that go and come, Eilthon could mean go and it could be come. In Greek, this word just means that there's a motion from one place to the other. So they'll use this either that you're coming or you're going. Okay, just a different way of doing things. Okay, and then you see here to the, okay, that's all coming from toe. The toe is a definite article, but it's in the dative case. Okay, and we'll get into this later. I'm just highlighting the conventions that I use. Okay, clear that. Remember I said that Greek does not have an indefinite article. So here that A would normally go right there. Okay. But I can't in English say singing song. It's too awkward to make sense. And we'll talk about the articles a little bit later in more depth. I'm mostly just showing that I'm adding a word that's not there. Okay, here we have singing, that's the participle. Adon, and song is odain. Okay, with no A in between. So those are my conventions that I'm going to use, and whenever I do these slides, and whenever you see me write articles and things like that. Okay, so here's that being said, here's how the grammar would look or sound like as if it's Koine Greek. And as you can see, what I did was I back translated the English back into Koine Greek. So in the red on the bottom is the Koine Greek. Okay, and this is how I rendered it then. I go or come to the Walmart to buy 12 eggs, singing song happily in the road or path or way. There I meet a man begging, since yet I will to help same a poor one. Gladly I give same some money. And so you see some things that are a little bit different. Let's see. I go, Elthang, excuse me, Eothang, to. Okay, well, I had to make this one up. There's no W in sound, so I said Almarto. Okay, the omega character is the dative case inflection of Walmart. Okay, so to buy 12 eggs, singing song happily in and to the Odo road or path or way. Eke, there, upin tesa, I meet, anthropon, a man, proseton, begging. Now here's a little twist here. Since yet, they tend to put the conjunction, let me circle that, as a second word. It's just a style of speaking. Since yet. Okay. Since yet, I will, to help, same. Their third person, what we would translate as a third person pronoun is same. We'll get into that a little bit later. The poor one, gladly, I give, same, some money. Okay, so I don't want to belabor this back translation. It's just, the point is that they're speaking in a different style, and we just have to get used to that. Okay. Okay, so there's the Greek alphabet again. You all should have memorized this. I'll go through it really quickly. Alpha makes an S sound. I'm going to speak in American, the normal American math, science, engineering, academic way of pronouncing the Greek letters and language. Alpha, A, beta, B, gamma, G, delta, D, epsilon, E, zeta, Z, eta, A, theta, Th, iota, I, kappa, K, lambda, L, mu, N, nu, N, psi. And I'll actually sometimes mispronounce a little bit just for emphasis. It's normally pronounced xi with a Z sound. I'm going to say psi, x, micron. Micron is little. It's the little o. Sound, pi, p, rho, r, sigma, I think I pointed this out before. Make sure that you remember there's an anomaly here. This n sigma is the same as a little normal character for sigma, but you put this if it's at the end of the word. Okay. sound. Tau, t, epsilon, phi, f sound. Chi, can't quite do that with my throat. It's k. And psi, and omega, mega, big O, O. Okay, so that's all clear. We can go on. This is a Koine Greek manuscript, a parchment. It's actually P46 from the 2nd to 3rd century AD. And it's Colossians 1:16. That's what it looked like. Very early manuscript. Notice how they wrote. All capital letters. No spaces or very few spaces. It seems to have a few here and there. But you can't even count on spaces. And no punctuation. You see that? So you've heard it from various teachers and pulpits and so on. All capitals, no punctuation, no spaces in a lot of manuscripts. There are other manuscripts that do have them. Also, no diacritical markings. Those are the accent marks. They're not in there. Okay. Now, I'm going to brush through this really quickly and then come back to it because I want to keep grammar at the top of our list here so that and fresh in your mind. So I'm going to come back to these slides at the end, but I'm going to mention them briefly. That there's a lot. English is based upon Latin, Greek, and Saxon roots. There's a lot of Greek that's already in the English language. And so you'll recognize a lot of prepositions and prefixes and suffixes in words, and it's helpful. If it's the root of the word, then, I've got about 5,000 or so roots to document here, which I'm not going to do. But the prepositions I selected 60 that I thought were the most used, cover most of the Bible text. And you see the preposition and what it literally means, what it may figuratively mean. And then if there's a Latin root here, then I showed the Latin. So for example, let's look at, arc, alpha, rho, and chi. And so you have that represents origination, literally, and preeminence or ruling if it's figurative. In English, we have ARCH, arch, like archbishop or archaeology or archeotype. Those are all from the original Greek prefix, but if it was Latin, it would be orig, as in originate or original. Okay, so it's very good to learn these because another thing that I'm going to point out is that Greek is kind of like Legos. You plug things together more than you do in English, and I'll cover that a little bit later. But you put this thing to that thing and just make it one word, and it's common for words to be either contractions or compounds of two other words or some prefix. Okay, so I'm going to go through that. As I said, I'm going to come back to it. So I wouldn't expect you to memorize this, but you'll recognize a lot of these. Okay, then I picked out 20 suffixes. This is a little bit difficult sometimes to distinguish from the grammatical inflection. Okay, but for example, as or is has an English equivalent of eyes, okay, to cause a lasting effect. For example, bapto is to dip. Baptizo, from which we get baptize, is to dip eyes, meaning to dip something in order to cause a lasting effect. In one of my articles, I documented that there was a Greek poet, Nicanor, I think it is, who said that to make a pickle, you first dip, that's bapto, the vegetable, the cucumber, in boiling water. Then you baptize it, that is to immerse or dipize that in a vinegar solution. So he uses both words in the same sentence. You dip it, and then you dip it in boiling water. It's brief. Then you dipize it in the vinegar solution, and that vinegar solution causes a lasting change. Okay, so there are a whole bunch of these. Pay particular attention to this mu alpha tag. I've seen so many times that has added important meaning to a word. It's the effect, result, or manifestation of something. An English equivalent would be something meant or something to'd. So some of these modify verbs, some nouns, and some adjectives, and some adverbs. Okay. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time right now on this because I want to go into grammar. What you've all been waiting for. Case. Remember, in English we had subjective and we had objective case. Now, in Greek, we will have nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, or vocative case. The inflection of the word, the way that it's spelled, usually in the ending of the word, will determine what the case is. The number is either singular or plural, and then gender is either masculine, feminine, or neuter. And I've got a little note here that words are categorized as masculine, feminine, and neuter, as either being masculine or feminine or neuter. So if you see a word, masculine does not imply manly, feminine does not imply womanly, and neuter does not mean it's not associated with a person. Okay, so some people try to jump to the idea that based upon the gender inflection of a word, that's going to give them some indication of the gender that it's associated with the gender, meaning masculine, feminine, or man, woman, or it, he, she, or it. And that's not the case. Okay, not necessarily anyway. But you have to look at the context there. Okay, so now I'm going to go and drill down to each one of these things to define what each thing means. Case is first. Case. Nominative case is a subject. Accusative case is an object. So the nominative case is pretty much the same as the English subjective case. And the accusative case is pretty much the same as the English objective case. But then you add the genitive and dative cases. Now, usually that translates the genitive into of something, and dative case to. This can be a little bit misleading because of is a preposition and to is a preposition. It is not the case that they are making an implied preposition. It's a matter of direction. So genitive, look at the diagram, means that this thing is of that. Okay? The relationship between this and that, I think I should use the marker. The relationship between this and that is in that direction. And Frederic asked, are the cases the same as in Latin? Yes, they are. Latin and Greek are sister languages, and there are many similarities. Okay. So then, for dative case, we usually translate that, and I emphasize translate that with the preposition to. And here you see that this relates to that in terms of direction, going that way. Okay. You have to internalize this. To understand it. Okay, so nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. And then vocative case is very simple. It just addresses someone. Now I'm going to give examples of this. In the next slide, I found the perfect example in the scriptures. I dug this up. You all know Matthew 13:24, where the kingdom of heaven is likened to a man sowing good seed. Okay, and I want to answer a question in the chat. How does the genitive case distinguish itself from something as possessive? Okay, a possessive would be a genitive, but a genitive would not necessarily mean possessive. Okay, and I didn't quite understand Frederic's question, so I'll wait till later for that. All right, so in this example, if you look at the actual order of the words in the Greek text, and this is another very important point, in English, order is very important. Order is part of the grammar. Order takes precedence in a lot of cases. In Greek, as well as many other languages, order is not important or not usually important. But in any case, order is subject to conjugation and declension of verbs and nouns respectively. So you can jumble these words, you can mix these words up and put them in different orders and it will mean the same thing. Order and more is on a broad phrase-by-phrase type of precedence. But you first start with case and conjugation, declension and conjugation. So the order is here, amoiethe is likened, a basileia, the kingdom, ton, orenon, of the heavens, anthropo speranti. You can tell, I have to apologize because I'm not usually, if it seems like I'm a little bit clumsy, it's because I'm normally reading and writing. I'm not, on paper, I'm not normally speaking. Kalon sperma. Okay, so good seed. So what is likened? Okay, likened. The subject is the kingdom. That's the nominative case. The kingdom of the heavens. Kingdom of the heavens. To a man. Okay, notice the direction. Kingdom of the heavens, likened to a man sowing. Sowing is a participle. And then the object of the participle is good seed in the accusative case. Take a look at that and make sure that you understand the kingdom of the heavens. To a man. Kingdom to a man. Not the heavens to a man, the kingdom to a man. And then sowing good seed. Sowing what? The object of sowing is good seed. It's accusative. Now, if we change these cases, it would change the meaning. For example, I could say the kingdom dative case to the heavens, in which case we're saying the kingdom to the heavens. Or if it was nominative, it would be the kingdom heavens, the heaven kingdom. Likewise, if I switch this around, to a man, to be genitive, it would become of a man. So it would be the kingdom of man. If they were both genitive, then it would be the kingdom of the heavens of a man. So both the man and the heavens are of the kingdom. But notice the directions here and how the comparison is made. The kingdom of the heavens to a man. The man sowing good seed, participle. Sowing good seed. Okay, everybody get that? All right, let me move on. All right, now it gets easier. Case example. Vocative. Thus then be praying, Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Okay, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord. And those are vocative. Woman, you have been loosed from your infirmity. That's vocative. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Those are all vocative case. And the Lord said to him in a vision, Ananias. That's vocative. Oh, foolish Galatians. That's vocative. And notice that there's an adjective. Oh, Galatians. The adjective modifies Galatians, and it's also vocative to match Galatians. Okay, so that's pretty simple. Definite articles. We touched upon this, and I want to describe it more. Here's the article the. We don't have any indefinite articles in the Greek. We only have the definite article. So now you can see a grid, a table of, you take the definite article, the. And now it can be masculine, feminine, or neuter, singular or plural, nominative, genitive, dative, or accusative. 3 times 2 times 4. And it would be made to match the noun that the article and adjective modifies. Now, the use of articles is actually more logical and consistent than in English. You'll find it, but it's awkward. For example, you're going to be reading Greek text and it'll talk about the God, okay, or the Jesus. So the Jesus said this about the God. Okay, why? That seems awkward. What do you mean, the God? Well, the problem is that in English we have an anomaly. It's logical in the Greek. It is not logical in English. Okay? We have this capital G, God, and God is a title. With articles in English, you have the indefinite or definite article, a or the. Okay. But if you don't use any, then it becomes a name. So, for example, considering the following sentence. I have a cat, and the cat's name is Cat. I have a cat, and the cat's name is Cat. Okay, the first time that I introduce cat, it's any cat. It's not definite, it's indefinite. But once I've mentioned the cat, then I'm going to refer back to it as the cat. But if I don't use either of them, then his name is Cat. Cat becomes a name. And then I capitalize the word, the first letter of that. Capital C, cat. Okay, so in Greek, you'll hear about the God. Okay, well, we in English have capital G-O-D, and so we call him God, but that's not his name. His name is Yahweh. There's the Hebrew right here, and it is the name of the God of Israel. Okay, so when they say the God, they're referring to the God that we're talking about, which is the God of Israel, not any other God. Likewise, Jesus is a very common name in those times, in Greek times, in the culture, and I know that Lou will be quick to tell you that in Hispanic places, Jesus is very common as well. So, you say, you walk up to a house and knock on the door and say, hey, do you know Jesus? And they'll say, yeah, he lives right next door, or two houses down. So we're talking about the Jesus, not any other Jesus. Okay? But there's no indefinite article. And Lou said Maria, Jose too. Okay, so Jesus, Mary, and so on. Okay. Personal pronouns. Now, you don't need these. The reason you don't need them is because it's in the conjugation of the verb, as I will show later. But you can use them for emphasis. So, personal pronouns can be used in that way. There's ego, which means I, emeis, we, so, which is you, and so on, sueas, you, and so on and so forth. And then you can even make them more emphatic by putting an epsilon before them. Okay. So when Jesus said to the Pharisees, before Abraham was, I am, he said ego, at least it's in the Greek, ego eimi. He didn't even need to say ego, but he was emphasizing I. He was also quoting the Greek translation of the account of Moses in Hebrew. So that's why they just picked up stones and stoned him, because they knew what he was talking about. Okay, so here's first person and second person. They don't really have a third person. What they'd use is same, auto. Okay, we have that in English, like automobile, automatic, autonomous. Auto refers to same. But when we translate it, we normally translate it as the third person personal pronoun. I could say this in English. I could say, if a man would diligently study the scriptures, the same will be blessed. In English, we would say, if a man would diligently study the scriptures, he will be blessed. But you know what I mean if I say, if a man diligently studies the scriptures, the same will be blessed. Okay. And here's some demonstrative pronouns. These are also called paradigm tables. There's lots of paradigm tables that for the Greek language, and I'm only listing a few of them here. Okay, demonstrative pronouns is this, these, or that, those. And it's based upon auto, which is same, and the, if you look at the previous two slides, you'll see the connection. The plus same. It's called a contraction. Like in English, a contraction would be isn't, aren't. Okay, one word. Isn't is short for is not, aren't, are not. Don't, do not. Okay, this is a contraction. So what they're really saying is the same. And then that, or those, the name of the tables is, the question is, what's the name of the tables again? These are called paradigm tables. P-A-R-A-D-I-G-M. It's just what they're called. Okay, so there's that and those, but that is a contraction of there, eki, and a noun ending. So it's like there, or the, how to say it? I guess there's no better way to say it. Here's relative pronouns. Remember we talked about them? Who, whom, which, definite or indefinite. So definite would be who, or whom, or which, or that. Who or whom are personal, masculine or feminine, and then which or that would be neuter. And then indefinite, you add the word any to that. Any is tis. And you get who any. So you can see how the Greek language kind of builds, and it's very logical. It's very nice to read. Interrogative, indefinite pronouns can either be interrogative as who, which, what, why, or someone, something. Now, they've used diacritical markings, accents in some manuscripts to distinguish those. Okay, there are many more examples of declension paradigms. These are just a few. Okay. I think I want to, before we get into conjugation of verbs, I want to have a question and answer again. Also give some people the opportunity to take a quick bathroom break if you don't have a question or an answer or something like that. So I'm going to go into Q&A and see if there. Okay, are there any questions? Yes, there is. Lou has a question. Go ahead, Lou.
Hi, brother. Quick question. So at the very beginning, when you were giving an example of, that in our colloquial English, we say, and I went here, and I did this, and I parked the car, and then, so you were explaining that in the Koine Greek that it's also kind of similar situation. So as you're reading the context, that is how you're able to distinguish if a kai, is referring to, an actual description of a series of things versus something that, and I did this, and I went here, is that how it is, or is there something else that you would be able to distinguish between those uses of kai in particular that I've seen they use a lot in Greek?
Right, and I want to make sure this is clear. It's very important that the way we speak in at least American English, like I said in this last slide. So, get this. I go to the Walmart, okay, and I'm going to buy a dozen eggs. And I'm singing this song as I go in, and I meet this guy. Okay, all of this I'm saying in the present tense. Present tense verbs. And it's informal in English, but that's the way, that's the only way that historical narratives are done in the Greek. So you're not going to see a translation exactly how they say it in the Greek because it's bad English style. You see what I'm saying by this? I'm kind of making that clear. I'm only saying that they spoke differently, as opposed to, it's not even it's got implications to the grammar, but grammatically they just they spoke differently, and we'll see how.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
Yeah, because it's going to get into aorist tense. That's usually how the most used tense, and it doesn't actually specify any time. Okay?
Yep, perfect, thanks.
Are there any other questions? Okay. The Q&A is over, so let's go to verbs. Conjugation of verbs. Now this is going to get really important. I hope everybody's back from the bathroom. They're inflected by, according to mood, tense or aspect, voice, person, and number. Mood expresses the modality, the speaker's attitude. It could be indicative, subjunctive, optative, infinitive, or imperative. Tense, and I'm going to define all these, so just kind of take in at a high level now. Tense or aspect, or tense/aspect, expresses time and completeness. The tense is the time part of it, and completeness is the aspect. Voice expresses who the agent of the verb acts upon. Active, middle, or passive. In English, we only have active and passive. And I'm going to show you that in Greek there's another voice called the middle voice. Then person, we already discussed that. That's easy. First person, second person, third person. First person is me or we, I or we, properly. Second is you, and third is he, she, it, them, or whatever. And then number is singular or plural. Okay, so let's find out what each one of these means. Before that, we have to do participles, because participles modify nouns and noun phrases and things. They're a little bit different in that they have tense and aspect. And they have voice, but then they have case and number and gender as well. Notice there are not as many tenses to a participle that a participle can have. Okay. Case and gender because they're acting like an adjective or noun or something. Okay. Verb mood. Indicative. Simply declares something. I did it, or I'm doing it, or I will do it. Subjunctive expresses it as an option. So it would be may, should, or would. I may do it, should do it, would do it. So grammatically it's an option. Optative expresses a possibility. I might do it. I could do it. Imperative expresses as mandatory, a command. Do it. Infinitive expresses as a principle, to do it. And can also be used as a verbal noun, adjective, or adverb. So in Greek, you're going to see some cases of to do it. They'll just throw an article and make it like a noun. Okay, we'll see that later. There's an issue with imperative mood that I touched upon before. In English, it's only ever in the second person. Go. Okay, the subject is you. You go. However, in Greek, you can express it as the second or the third person. So if it's in the third person, it could be he, she, it, they, go. I'll give an example of this a little bit later. Now, the third person is untranslatable. The best we can do for the third person is something like, well, okay, let him go. Let him go. Oops, that won't work. It sounds like he's captive or something like that, and you want him to be released. Okay, that's not going to work. So let's try. Let him be gone. Okay, that's better, but the second person imperative verb let is not in the text. It's just be gone in the third person. Well, it's go in the third person. You see how I'm kind of stumbling over my words now? And then be plus the verb past passive participle is not correct because go is not passive. So it's not be gone, it's go. So you're not able to actually translate that in any satisfactory way. You can only paraphrase a third person imperative. So you have to internalize the meaning. So I'm going to give an example now. Okay, the Lord's Prayer. Be hallowed the name of you. What he is doing, well, you JGLM folks are going to cheer with glee. because that's what we've been saying all along. This is a declaration. He's speaking to God, but making it an imperative that God's name is sanctified. So he's speaking to God, but the third person is the name. You get that? Be hallowed the name of you. Come the kingdom of you. Be become the will of you. Okay, so the command is to a third person. No way to exactly express it. You see, be hallowed the name of you. He's not commanding God. He's commanding that the name of God be sanctified. Come, the kingdom of you. He's not commanding God. He's commanding the kingdom. He's speaking to God, but commanding the kingdom to come. But he's not speaking to the kingdom. He's speaking to God. Be become the will of you. He's not commanding God. He's commanding that the will of God be become. Okay, so that's the Lord's Prayer. Here's another example. Jesus says, the having ears to be hearing, hear. And I'm translating this pretty literally here. You know how it is in English. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. Okay, that's how they say. And again, going back to the Lord's Prayer, normally it's translated, let's see, hallowed be your name. Let your name be hallowed. So you use the word let. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done. Let your will be done. But the word let is not in there. It's just be become. Okay, going back to end of the having ears to be hearing. Okay, anyone that has ears to hear, hear. Okay, but he's not talking about, he's speaking to the crowd about anyone, and that anyone is the third person. That anyone who would have ears to be heard, he commands or makes mandatory, hear. Okay. So then, another example. If any is willing behind me to be coming, normally translated, if any would come after me, let him take up his cross, deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Okay. If any is willing to behind me to be coming, renounce self. He's speaking to an audience. He's not commanding the audience. He's speaking about the third person, the person who's willing to be coming behind him, to follow him. Renounce self, take up cross of sin, and be following to me. In each of these cases, the command is to a third person, not the one being addressed. So I'm taking a little extra time here just to make sure, because you have to recognize when a third person imperative happens and recognize what what is being mandated. Okay. Tense and aspect. Tense, as I said, expresses time, past, present, future. Aspect expresses completion or incompletion, normally perfect or imperfect. Now the tenses we're going to see are going to change. There's going to be a different set of tenses as compared to English, you'll see. In English is more concerned with time. Greek is more concerned with aspect. English wants to know when it happened. Greek wants to know more. Did it happen? Is it still happening? Did it complete or not? It's just a different emphasis. So they do have tenses, but it's more concerned with aspect than time. Okay. Here are the tenses in Greek. Present tense is something that happens or is happening now. So is verb ing, okay? Is doing, is running, is loving. Imperfect is not completed. Something, so the implication is that it already started, it started in the past, but it didn't complete. So that's a little bit tricky. Has been verb ing, so has been doing, has been loving. That's an imperfect tense. Perfect is something that's completed. Has loved, has ran, has strived. Pluperfect is the same as the past perfect in English. Had run, had bought, had done. Something that completed in the past. Future will happen in the future. Obviously, that's the same. It's easy. And then the aorist states the fact of it plain and simple without specifying time or completion. So here we have no time. It's indefinite. We'll get into that a little bit more later. Those are the verb tenses in Greek. You're going to see places where the imperfect tense is translated as past tense. Did you notice that there is no past tense in the Greek? They just don't have it. They've got some tenses that we don't. We've got some tenses that they don't. Two different languages. But the imperfect tense, and I'm careful to document these things because here I'm starting to go against standard translation doctrine. Okay. And so who am I to do that? Well, I've got to drill this right back to the original definitions. All the definitions that I'm giving you are based upon how the ancient Greeks defined the tenses. They have changed with modern Greek. And that's why I told you, do not pull up modern Demotic Greek resources, don't talk to Greek people in conversation or whatever, because they do define it a little bit differently today, 2,000 years later. But here's the actual definition. You see in the definition, this is chronos, peritatikos, chronos, peritatikos, the imperfect tense. Chronos is tense, time. Chronos, like we get the word chronological and so on, and peritatikos. Okay, that's the imperfect tense. That's how it's defined. This is the online, this is the Liddell Scott Jones Greek English lexicon. This has all of classical Greek, not just Koine Greek, but all of classical Greek in it. So if you look at your Strong's Concordance, it's got between 5,000 and 6,000 entries. This has about roughly a little bit under 120,000 entries, corresponding to all the words of Koine Greek and all the words of Attic and Ionic and Doric and other dialects of Greek. Okay, so this is a very simple definition. Apollonius Discolas, that's the abbreviation right here. Perisyntaxios, recognize the word syntaxios. Okay, so this is a Greek grammar reference dated 2 AD. We're going by the original definitions. Peri is around or concerning, and syntaxios is grammar, concerning grammar. Okay. So let's look at the imperfect tense as an example. I like this one the best. John 1:1. Okay, now traditionally it's translated, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And everybody pretty much has read that, memorized it. It's doctrine. Don't worry, I'm not going to contradict that doctrine. I'm going to add to it and make it even more sure. Okay. So the actual text is NRK, ein o logos, kai o logos, ein pros ton theon, kai theos, ein o logos. Okay. In origin, not was, but has been being. The Word, and the Word has been being toward the God, and God has been being the Word. In most translations, they switched around the order of this, just to make it work better in English. Instead of saying, and God was the Word, they say the Word was God. Okay. Now, there's a problem here with past tense. Greek is very specific. And if we were to use past tense, you could ask the question, it was true, is it anymore? Okay, so what? The beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Maybe it isn't anymore. But if you use the imperfect tense, then you can see that it's continuing. It's incomplete, meaning that it applies as much now as it did back then. So the correct use of it would be, in origin has been being the Word, and the Word has been being toward the God, and God has been being the Word. And here in the last phrase, it now makes sense. God has been being the Word. Neat, huh? So again, this makes it even more doctrinally secure and explicit. You can't get around it if you use the imperfect tense. But who's going to, who is going to translate it this way? This is too awkward to be in English. All translations are going to use formal English, proper English writing and style. And then, again, the switched around part here, okay, it actually makes it more clear. And in fact, it couldn't be the other way. It couldn't be the Word has been being the God. Well, I suppose it could. It's a linking verb, but God has been being the Word. Okay, let me do my clicks here. The aorist tense is the other tricky one. Okay, again, I'm going to drive it back to the original definition by the ancient Greeks. Aoristos. A is without, oristos is boundaries. Okay, see that? A, without. Oristos, boundaries. Indeterminate. Indefinite. Without limit of time. And here, actually, definition number 3 is, that's the definite article, aoristos, that's a dot for abbreviation, the aorist tense. Recognize this guy? This is the same guy, Apollonius oh, what's his name? Disculus. I have to go back and see how to pronounce that. So this is the ancient Greek's definition, not a modern scholar's definition. Aristos, a without, and oristos, defined boundary. The noun orizon, you usually add like an H before that, is where we get the English transliteration horizon. Horizon, horizon. A horizon is a fixed boundary that can be viewed without a reference point. Aorist has no reference point. It is indefinite. Modern Greek does use aorist as a past tense. Modern Greek, past tense, 2,000 years later. Koine, or classical or ancient, as I just shown, has no past tense. Yet the aorist tense is traditionally translated as past tense. Why? And there's several reasons for that. One is because it's proper and formal English to use the past tense to tell historical narratives. But also there's the issue of just the process of translation, and it's just easy to for a professor to say, well, if you see the aorist, translate that in past tense. Just do it, And what I'm saying is that we need to challenge that. Go back to the original meanings of the original text. Okay, so let me give an example here. It's the same one, okay? So English way of narrating, again, he went to Walmart to buy a dozen eggs. But the Greek way is he goes to Walmart to buy a dozen eggs. Okay? Then in the English way of narrating, we speak now using the past tense. In the Greek way, the narrator speaks as though he's there in the past. It's the past because he's obviously not there. Okay. Believe it or not, we do have an implied aorist tense. In English, we do that. In that example that I gave, I'm going to go back a slide. He goes to Walmart to buy his dozen eggs. I'm speaking in an implied aorist tense. I'm not specifying when I did it. Okay? So the example I like to use is I play the piano. Okay, now go back to your English conjugation chart and find out what play is. I won't go back there right now because I have to click the back arrow too many times. But according to the rules of English verb conjugation, play is present tense, specifically the simple present tense. Okay? Play. Simple present tense. Okay? What if I told you that right now? Okay, I'm going to make a statement. I play the piano. Do you hear anything? No. What am I doing? I'm speaking. I'm not playing the piano. So Garth says, I play the piano. Although there's no English aorist verb conjugation, the context dictates that I'm just stating the fact, plain and simple. You could rephrase that as, I am a piano player. Okay. Behold the teaching of the new man. all the red underlined verbs are aorist tense. And they speak of fact, not action on a timeline. Blessed be the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who blesses us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places. Okay, let's stop right there. Who blesses us? When does he bless us? That's not the point of this. It's fact that he blesses us. I go back and forth on whether I should even use improper English and say, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who bless us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places in Christ, just as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we would be holy and blameless before him. In love, he predestined us. So whether to put the S in there or not, because I'm not stating that this is an action of a present tense, I'm stating that it is fact. He bestows on us, he lavishes us, he makes known. This is all aorist tense. Now I have a few footnotes down here. One is, because those who have studied, I want to say doctrine and theology and stuff like that, would recognize that this is one of the Calvinist proof texts to show that predestination, that our destiny is fixed in the past. I wrote an article about that, but just to keep things simple here, this is not stating a time. Okay, and in fact, even the words, I've got a few footnotes here that this before, okay, is pro, which means ahead of something in time. Okay, foundation is katapoles. Can look that up. Okay, the casting down of the world, ahead of the casting down of the world. Okay, just to clean things up here. So if you say ahead of the casting down of the world, that's not necessarily a time. Before usually means time. Okay, and pro can mean before, but it can also mean ahead of. It fundamentally means ahead of geometrically. Okay, so ahead of the casting down of the world. In other words, the foundation. So his choice of us is taking preeminence over the casting down of the world. Okay. Predestined itself is a, well, let me just erase this. So predestined itself is pro oristos. You should recognize that because the aorist tense is eoristos. Okay, this is ahead defined. He defines us ahead to adoption as sons. Okay, and then likewise over here, this is just a different, only in that it's a participle. Okay, here you have the subject, the verb, he predestines. Here you have participle, predestined, defined ahead according to his purpose. So the whole discussion about, well, let me just go on to the next slide. Erase in normal drawing mode. Same thing with Romans 8:29, a typical Calvinist truth text. For those, in the traditional translation, it's for those who he foreknew, he also predestined to become conformed to the image of his Son, so that we would be the firstborn among many brethren. And those whom he predestined, he also called. Those whom he called, he also justified, and those whom he justified, he also glorified. So it sounds like an event on a timeline, but it's not. It's just stating a bunch of facts. This is fact, fact, fact. Those whom he foreknows, he also predestines, defines ahead of time, calls, justifies, glorifies. All facts, no time. Okay? So now, as I mentioned down in the bottom paragraph, the sovereignty of God, Calvinistic sacred cow-proof text of this just dissolves, because it's based upon an English language deficiency and not true to the original grammar. Ephesians 1 and Romans 8:29-30 communicate timeless truths that apply to us. There is no reference to a timeline. These scriptures only communicate the fact, plain and simple. Aorist tense is fact, plain and simple. Okay. Now, just to drive this home a little bit more, example how the aorist translated into past tense doesn't work. Because the aorist can also be done in the imperative. Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped a slide. I'm going to read my own slide. Okay. How it doesn't work. Okay. Remember the Colossians 1:23 example. And this is the second of three instances that I'll describe that. Okay, the traditional rendering, okay, I used the KJV here, but pretty much all the translations do something similar. Be not moved away from the hope of the gospel, which ye have heard, and which was preached to every creature which is under heaven. Really. Preached in Mexico, Alaska, Venezuela, Australia, South Africa, Japan. Did they finish the job back in the 1st century? Are we done? If you use the past tense, it doesn't work. It's the aorist tense and it's timeless. So now, ekasate is the verb here. Kerextentos is the verb participle, genitive case, describing the gospel. Okay? So then, the gospel has a description to it. The participle modifies the word gospel. We are not to be moved from the hope of the gospel. What kind of gospel? The herald in all creation under heaven gospel. So the problem is solved. It describes the fact of the gospel that is heralded without any reference to time. Okay. Because it's a participle, and you see, you understand participles. It's so important to understand participles. Okay. The participle modifies gospel. What is wrong with this translation? Okay, several things. First of all, which ye have heard is not past tense. The Greek does not have a past tense. I showed you all the tenses, and past tense is not one of them. It's which ye hear. Okay? That's this one, corresponds to there. Okay? The second problem is that this one was preached is being expressed as a regular, a normal verb, not a participle. There is no subject here. The word which is not in there. The word and is not in there either. Okay? You can see it right here. The, of the, this genitive case, of the, preached in all the creation, the, oops, that's a misspelling there, hupo, under the heaven. Okay, that's a U. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so if you can internalize this, it's the preach in all creation under heaven gospel. Now, without the time aspect, since it's aorist tense, there's no time. We're disconnected from the past, present, future. It's talking about the gospel. Now, this is have heard is actually the King James has the present perfect tense, English present perfect tense. There is a way that you can spell it in present perfect, and this is not it. That's aorist tense. Okay, so I'm going to go down to the next thing and then answer a couple of questions there that are on the chat. Proof that aorist equals past tense is nonsensical. The aorist tense, if you look at the paradigm charts of conjugation, occurs in the imperative mood 1,038 times. I counted them. That's the number that I came up with in the New Testament. You cannot command something to be done in the past. For example, produce is imperative. Produce fruits worthy of repentance. He's telling them, he can't be telling them to do something in the past. And they rouse him saying, Lord, save us. That can't be, he can't, this is when Jesus was asleep in the boat. Okay, so the disciples wake him up and they say, save us. They're not commanding him to save them in the past, okay, because they're saying we are perishing in the present. So he wants them to save us. Blind Pharisee, cleanse first the inside of the cup. Okay, that is imperative. Prophesy to us, Christ. Who is the one hitting you? Yet again they cried, crucify him. These are all aorist imperative. Okay. And also I noticed in the bottom that, I noted in the bottom that aorist tense also occurs in the subjunctive and optative moods 1,447 times in the New Testament. But you can't have optional past events. Okay, so let's go back to answering the questions. Oops, put down one. Okay, nope, what happened here? There we go. Okay, so in my chat window, can I make this bigger? No. Okay, Alia has a question. I was taught that aorist in indicative mood has a past meaning always. That is incorrect. You look at the definition according to the ancient Greeks. The problem is, again, is that most Greek classes are focused on how to translate it into proper English and how to translate it the same way it's always been done before in terms of the grammar. So this is a translation tradition that's been carried along. And so it is simply, I mean, you can do that, Past tense does express something that is accomplished, that is true. Okay, but unfortunately, past tense expresses something accomplished in the past. As we saw from my example, here I play the piano. That's not past, it's not present, it's not future. I'm not saying that I played the piano in the past. I'm not saying that I will in the future. I'm not saying that I'm doing it now. I'm saying I play the piano as a matter of fact. Okay, and that is how the aorist tense is defined. Indefinite, no time. Okay, so if you will be consistent with that, then it makes sense throughout the other moods, throughout imperative, subjunctive, and optative moods, and everything just works. The key is that you've got to get used to people speaking according to how the original Greeks spoke. As I said, English is not the metric by which all other languages are judged. The usual Greek translation doctrine is to first take the Greek, convert that to an English expression, and then interpret the English expression. What I'm saying is go back to the Greek, understand what it says, and then do the best you can to translate it into English if you can. Okay, so it indicates fact. Well, you said it indicates fact that it's done. No, it indicates fact. Done would imply that it's in the past. It only indicates fact, the fact of the action. Okay, so if I move down then, let's see. Okay, so how does Greek express past is the question of Frederick. The way it does is not by using past tense, but by using the perfect tense, completion. So if I say, I play the piano, the perfect tense would be, I have played the piano. So the fact that it's hard to say it in English, I have played the piano implies past tense. And so you can actually conjugate the verb in the perfect tense, and it works. Okay. Okay, let's see, where are we here? The nouns. How much do I have to go to? Okay. Oops. No, I really messed things up. Just gauging my progress here. Yeah, we're getting close, and then I'll be able to open this up to questions. But I had to spend extra time on these things because, again, aorist tense does not exist in English. Neither does the imperfect. Okay, so let's see, go down to where we were. Verb voices. Active, acts upon. Passive is acted upon. We know that from English. But there's a middle one, which is middle voice, which is acts upon such as to be acted upon. So it's both. It's not in the middle, actually. It's both at the same time. So let me give an example of how that. See, my slides there don't seem to be going. I must have gotten into a different view mode. I need single page view. Okay. Okay. Middle voice. Here's an example. Judas went and hanged himself. Okay, now in English, then we would say hanged himself. 2 words. In Quinny Creek, there's 1 word. Okay. And coming, going away. He, what? The verb is a compound of apo. Okay. Apo plus agcho, or agco. I can't do the throat thing, sorry. The prefix is from or off, away from. Okay, and the verb is squeeze, strangle, or choke. So the compound of apo and agcho is to strangle off. Judas did not strangle anyone, that would be active voice. And nobody strangled him, passive voice. In other words, it doesn't say Judas strangled, Judas hanged. It doesn't say Jesus was hung, Judas was strangled off. He strangled himself, middle voice. We have to use 2 words to represent it because the English does not have a middle voice. Okay? All right, so then another example. This, traditionally, I'll just quote the King James Version, I appoint unto you a kingdom as my Father hath appointed unto me. There's just a chat line, almost like reflexive, but not, yeah, it is reflexive. That's a good way to put it. The verb middle voice is a reflexive way of expressing. Thank you, Lou. I think I'm going to use that, assuming you don't have a copyright on it. KJV says, I appoint unto you a kingdom as my Father hath appointed unto me. Now, the appoint here is as happens twice. Okay. Diatheme and diatheto. Okay. And in the middle voice, this is an I am covenanting, present middle, to you according as the Father of me. I'm just reading the words one at a time now. Covenants to me a kingdom. But there's actually, with the middle voice, is a little bit more, because to covenant, in the first instance, Jesus is entering a covenant in the present tense with his disciples. So he covenants so as to enter the covenant. So he covenants with the disciples, but he covenants with himself. He covenants so as to be covenanted. You get that? Covenant so as to be covenanted. In the second instance, it's in the aorist tense. So he states the timeless fact of his covenant with the Father. That he is in a covenant with the Father such that, Lou, reflexively, he is covenanted. The middle voice, the verb covenant, reveals a reciprocal agreement that Jesus covenants so as to enter the covenant himself, just like his covenant with his Father is likewise reciprocal. So you can get a little bit more in the meanings of things when you look at the original in this case. So here we have English verb conjugation. Again, you remember this. Notice no aorist tense. Okay, so in the case of aorist tense, where I'm substituting loose, simple present. Okay, I loose, he looses. Okay. Traditional translation doctrine would say, change the color, would say do this. Okay. My point is that because the past tense always represents something that is in the past, whereas the present tense can represent something that is either in the present or is stated as a fact. I played the piano. Okay, then the present tense is the better one to use. They may not make for good English reading, but if you understand it, then that's going to help you out a lot. So now let's go on to the most classic verb paradigm table that there is. It's for the Greek version of loose. Okay, lou. Normally verbs are, if you just, the dictionary definition entry will have normally the present, active, indicative, first person singular. So when you hear somebody say luo, okay, that's the word used. They're using this one form of it. Okay, but you can see that there are going to be many forms, many conjugations of that one word. Here's the present tense. And you see present active or middle and passive. When I say middle and passive, it's the same spelling for middle as in passive, so you can't tell the difference. You'd have to examine the context. Okay, subjunctive. Okay, so if this would I loose, then this would be I should loose or would loose. Optative would be I might loose or could loose. Imperative doesn't exist in the first person, right? So then, in the case of the second person, it would be lue, which would be loose, you meaning. But the third person would be lueto, okay, referring to the third person. Okay, then the infinitive to loose, middle to or passive to be loosed. Okay, and then the participles, and there's all sorts of participles, and as you can see that they are also declined according to the case, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, although this is a verb conjugation, but they act like a noun or an adjective. And also with masculine and feminine neuter. Okay, plural, middle, plural. Okay, so that's present tense. Then let's go to the next slide, shows the imperfect tense. Eluan would be I have been loosing, or eluo main, I have been being loosed, and other variations. Okay, then there's the future tense, luso, and so on. The perfect and pluperfect tenses, I put them together. Leluka, and a lulukean. Okay, remember, perfect means something completed. Answering again Frederick's question, how would they express something in the past? Well, with the perfect tense. It's been completed. If it's been completed, it has to have had happened in the past. Okay, and the pluperfect is like past perfect in English, means that it was completed in past tense. Yeah, I mean in the past time. Not recently. Not now. Not now completed, but in the past completed. Okay. And then notice, and then in the last, well, let me just not jump ahead. Here's the aorist tense. Okay. And now notice something about the aorist tense. It's got every single definition, every possible variation. You have the active, middle, and passive, right? Let me use my pen here. So you've got active, still, I don't like the red. Change back to my green. Okay. So you have active, middle, passive. You have subjunctives, optatives, the imperatives, all the participles, everything. Okay? And whereas in the others, you have only some. This is the most used tense, and you have no subjunctives, no optatives, no imperatives. Of course, that wouldn't make sense. Anyway, then you've got the future tense, and then notice the imperfect tense and the present tense. In present, again, where the middle and passive are combined, that you have the same spelling for either. So here, everything makes sense with the aorist tense if you just keep it to stating the fact. Now, I want to show you a little bit of a interesting way that it's spelling, and this is not a hard and fast rule that applies everywhere. Let's go back to the present tense, luo. Okay. Now let's look at the imperfect tense, iluo, iluon. Okay. Notice that it's added the epsilon character before it. In the case of the future tense, a little bit of I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. Swipe to the left and right, I think. Okay. For perfect and pluperfect, there's something called reduplication. So the conjugation doesn't just have an inflection on the end of it here, but also before it. Reduplication takes the original consonant, adds a vowel, and that's part of the conjugation. So it's not Luca, it's Leluca for perfect. And then when you go to pluperfect, then you've got a, lay, Luke, and some suffix. So you've got a prefix and a suffix. Same word, lu. So the reduplication tends to indicate the completion, and the epsilon tends to indicate the past, in a sense. Okay, so now notice with the aorist tense, well, let's see, let me go back to future tense, has this kind of a trademark S, a sigma. Okay, And there's some others in here, like, for example, you see the theta character tends to make it passive and so on. But what I'm kind of showing here is that the sigma character tends to throw it into the future. Okay? You with me? I hope. Whereas the epsilon character tends to throw it into the past. In the aorist tense, you have both. So you see that we have a, lu, sa. Okay, so you could kind of call this the aorist tense a past future tense, if you want to call it that. Past future tense. So if you've got past and future, then it's timeless. And if it's got past and future, then it's got to have the present. So again, this is just the spelling, and it's just an interesting thing. Don't take that as a hard and fast rule that works with every single verb. Again, this is a regular verb. When you get into irregular verbs, they're going to morph into different things, just like English does, and you just have to learn them. Okay, and that's it. So it's quite a lot of information, and I want to now go back to question and answers. I'm sure there'll be many of them, and let's see where we go from there. Where's my? Oh, there it is. Okay. Question and answer thing. Okay. I think I'm all set. So go ahead. So Lou is usually the first one. And here we go with Lou. Everybody else just get in the queue. Here we go. Lou.
Alrighty, thanks, brother. Could you remind me again what was the difference of? I see that there's sometimes the first aorist or the second aorist and things like that is when I'm reading in some of the way that they describe it, that there's a first, there's a second aorist or something like that.
Oh, good question to bring up. Yes, the first and second aorists are kind of like regular and irregular verbs. So the meaning is the semantics. The meaning is the same. The grammar is the same. But the spelling in first aorist takes a different form, or I should say the second aorist takes a different form than the first aorist. So this would be first aorist here, and then if it was second aorist, there'd be a different set of spellings to distinguish them. Now the nice thing about this, as I'll be showing you in future sessions, is that we don't have to memorize all these paradigm tables because the computer's done that. It's all the computer's done that for us. So you just click on it and you can see what they are. Okay. Does that answer the question though?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So I will click you off, and the next person is Olia. Yes, Olia.
Hi guys. Thanks. I don't agree with what you said about aorist, because just because in English there is no equivalent doesn't mean that you should not translate it as past tense. Because if you say, for example, because God so loved people, it doesn't mean that he loved. So in aorist, you don't say that he loved once or in a certain period of time and it stopped. It's just indefinite, but it means that it is done. You know what I mean? And like all of the stuff that I studied, it actually indicates that this action is done, but just because we don't have the equivalent, we have no better choice to translate it differently. But it does indicate in the indicative mood, it indicates that this thing was done. It doesn't say when it finished, but it is a done deal. First thing, and another is that I agree that we should not compare this like Greek to English grammar, but like in your statement you said that like the aorist tense also occurs in the subjunctive and optative moods. Are all those optional past events that wouldn't make sense. So I just want to say that it does make sense. It just, Greek is much more complicated and we cannot, so I remember when we were reading like original text, you cannot translate it. You just need to understand how this language works. It just, like some people have 50 definitions of snow, but we can translate the snow only white or crispy, or like we have 2 or 3, right? But it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that all other definitions don't make any sense. It's different. So, and even like if we use this, like, I don't know, like imperative in the past, it has a difference than, like, it has, like, for example, you can say in English, do it, and in Greek you can say like, do it quickly, do it now, do it 1 time or 10 times, do it slowly, do it like, and it all of those endings, all of those tenses and moods, they express that. But we cannot translate it properly. So it's not that, yeah, so I just wanted to say that it does make sense, but like we need to dig in deeper and like to understand how this language works, because if you compare it to English, English is much more poor language compared to the Greek one. I think you will agree with me that it's like Greek is more complicated.
Okay, well, I would claim that Greek is actually very simple, not complicated. It might be complicated to when you're thinking about it in an English sense. But when you give, for example, John 3:16, so God so loved the world, that's the normal translation of that. But that is actually a aorist tense. So it's not past tense. If it was past tense, it would be, well, he loved the world, maybe he doesn't anymore. That he gave, or maybe he's not giving anymore. But if you translate it as God so loves the world, and again, I realize that when I say God loves the world, I'm not saying that it's a present continuing tense, as in God is loving the world. God loves is a done deal, but it's not something that is done, it's a fact. So we're almost saying the same thing, which is that the aorist tense specifies something that is fact, and a fact is a done deal. But it's not a fact, does not necessarily happen according to a time frame. You know, again, it's indeterminate, limitless, without boundaries, indefinite. There's all words that can be used without limit of time. And again, this is the definition of the aorist tense according to the ancient Greek, not according to modern Greek. Modern Greek does use aorist for past tense. Okay, so how do you translate it? Well, you know, again, in John 3:16, God, if I say God so loves the world, what I mean is that God's love for the world is such that. And I didn't note here in the slide, although I almost did, that with the play the piano thing, that, oh, let's see, here we go. Yeah. Oops, I didn't want that to happen. Okay. So you can, if you take the verb here play, okay, and then you change it from a verb to a noun. Okay, and then put the intransitive verb in here. Then that makes it's a paraphrase now, but it makes more sense. Okay, I am a piano player is the sense of what I'm trying to convey. Now, to go back to the idea of translating the past tense, I would say, if it's aorist tense, would I translate it, I played the piano, because it's a done deal. Well, it's true that I played it. If I'm a piano player, then I did play the piano, but that's not my point. The point is I'm stating as a fact, plain and simple, that I am a piano player. So if you, again, you change the verb here to a noun here, then you can paraphrase it correctly. And by the way, this is not something I invented, or I'm just showing out of the blue from the ancient Greek definition of the tense. There's been a lot of discussion about this among academia, and I've read articles about it. That what do? We know it's stating fact. Plain and simple, it's a point thing, and then others say, well, we need to translate this as past tense. So it's translation doctrine, really, that gets us there. If I don't do that, then I don't have a translation that works according to English style. And unfortunately, the translations are going to always be done according to formal English style, formal English grammar and writing style. And again, they're all going to be done pretty much grammatically the same way. So, I don't know. Does that help to explain what I'm getting at? It's when you first hit with this thing, it's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? My professor in Greek told me to translate the indicative aorist as as past tense. Okay, so the indicative is past tense, and then for the subjunctive and optative and imperative, you do it differently, and this is what makes it all complicated. If you will apply this, what I'm telling you, according to the ancient Greek definition, then it all makes sense. It's always just stating the fact. It's just that they talked differently. The historical narratives were never in the past tense, as we in English understand past tense. And I know, you're of Ukrainian descent, and so of course I can't speak to Ukrainian or Spanish in Lou's case. I don't, I can only speak to English and, well, Latin. Latin does not have an aorist tense. So I guess that's how I would explain it. Lou just said that they do have imperatives for the third person. I did not know that in Spanish. Yeah. So let me move on here. Prudence. Let's see. Click there. Yes, Prudence. Can you?
Yeah, I can hear you. Again, I'm sorry for the background noise. Yeah, my comment, probable question was on the one thing is that God is timeless. Maybe that's why the your sense. But there is also the fact that some words, some of the actions in the Bible, the work of Christ has been done, and then the fact is, it is a fact. It's a done deal, but the effect of what was done continues. Is it the aorist tense that explains that, or is there any other tense that does express such action or such fact. I don't know if you understand my question.
Yeah, I kind of do, yeah. So you're saying the fact of it continues. What I'm saying is time is not in the equation. It's only speaking of aspect, speaking of it fact, plain and simple. So here, if I say I am, what happened to my pen? I am a piano player. Okay, that by changing the verb to a noun, then I remove from it the time aspect, because player, a noun cannot be either past, present, or future. And that am is just speaking of the fact of it. I am a piano player. So what you're saying is that it applies past, present, and future. And, I mean, you could say that, yes. But you'd have to say it applies past, present, and future. It's not that it started in the past and is continuing in the future. You follow what I'm saying? There's not a time aspect to it. You could say it's a done deal, but then you go back to, I play the piano. Okay, is the fact that I'm a piano player a done deal? Well, I'm not saying that it's done. I'm just saying that I'm a piano player. I play the piano. I'm sitting here in front of a computer, and not as in that picture that you see on the screen. My hands are on a computer keyboard, on the mouse actually, and not on the piano keyboard. When I say I play the piano, all of a sudden you realize that at some point, for me to say that, I should have learned how to play the piano, which means I certainly played the piano in the past. But that means I'm capable of playing the piano in the future. So in the future, I could play it right now. I could leave this room, go into the other room, and play that piano.
Yeah, if you said I played the piano, that's in the past and is done, and you are no longer playing, right? And that will not be aorist tense.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm saying if you said I played the piano, so that would mean that yes, you played the piano in the past, but now you are no longer playing the piano, which is different from saying I play the piano, which means also that you are a piano player.
Yes, but I could make the same statement while playing the piano. In other words, if I left this computer, went into the other room, and started playing, okay, so just pretend I'm playing the piano, okay, so I'm sitting just like that picture, okay, and I'm playing How Great Thou Art, or some other song that's your favorite song, da 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 da. Okay, and then and I'm looking at the keyboard, and then I turn like that kind of silly Photoshop type picture shows, look at you and say, I play the piano, and you're like, yeah, I know, I can see that. I can see that you play the piano. Yeah, when did you learn to play the piano? Well, when I was a kid. So see here, watch. But see, I'm not. When I turn my head to you and while playing the piano and say that I play the piano, you've got a different sense of it. I play the piano. Well, yeah, obviously, but you've got the sense of that I am capable of playing the piano. That I'm a piano player. That piano playing is a part of me. I could just sit down and play anytime that I wanted. But the property of being able to play the piano applies to me. I am a piano player. So, Prudence, what I'm saying is that I could say this while playing the piano. Now, if I said, I am playing the piano, that is present progressive tense. And you say, well, obviously you are playing the piano. I can hear that. That would be a different sense than if I say, I play the piano. And so I'll boldly make the statement that most of the time, when English speakers use this English simple present tense, they are usually using it in the indefinite sense, in the aorist sense. I played the piano. I study Greek. I'm not doing it now. I'm doing the presentation. I drink water too. Oh, look at me. Okay. I'm drinking water. Okay, that's present continuous. Okay. And as you can see, I drink water, as opposed to Coca-Cola. Curry, everybody knows Curry, right? Curry Blake, he drinks Cokes all the time, right? No, I don't drink Coke. I don't drink Coke. Okay, I drink water. And actually, that's pretty much all I drink. Sometimes I drink juices or other things, as you see me, but usually just water. I'm a water drinker. Okay. Does that make sense, Prudence?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. That's where I think the time is gone, but I was wondering if 1 John chapter 1 verse 7, the last part is also a aorist. It says, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all sin. Is that the aorist tense, which will be timeless?
Yeah, let me look that up. Okay.
Yeah, you can answer it another time.
No, that's okay. No. I can bring that up very quickly here. Oops. This can take just a second, and then go to. You said, what was it, John?
1 John chapter 1 verse 7, and the last part, especially the last part, that says, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all sin.
Okay, so that's a good point. So now, if we walk in the light as he himself is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus' Son cleanses us from all sin. Let me look at the tense of the word cleanse. Okay, let's see a little Greek here, and no, that is present tense, not aorist. Okay, let me just check the. I'm checking really quickly for any manuscript differences. Nope, there are none. The best way to translate that would be, if we say, if we walk in the light. Okay, the blood of Jesus, his Son, is cleansing us from all sin. Okay.
He is cleansing us, so which means continuing.
Because remember, as long as we believe, that applies to us.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me check my. There's more. Let me move on. Okay. Lou, you next.
All right. Thanks, brother. Looking at John 1:1 that you had shared, is there a reason? So you mentioned that the articles are used sometimes to emphasize, that they help to provide some emphasis, and so you have the word, and then later you have the God, and then at the very end, and it says, and God, and there's no article there. You know, is there a reason why that article wouldn't be there? Is there some particular rule, or how? What's the type of emphasis? Is it being emphasized because it doesn't have the article, or how is that?
Actually, I never even noticed that before.
Okay, because
so
you have
something there, because the word was
you have tone.
It's been named the word, and the word was toward the God, and why doesn't it say the God has been being the word?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know. That's a good question. It doesn't have tongue.
Yeah, there and
Or because it's nominative.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing, and so I don't know if there's aspects of emphasis, or is there a different connotation of what theos would have, or I don't know what that would.
Yeah, I don't think I know the answer to that question.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, all right. Well, that is the end of the list of people in question and answer. We're going to have plenty of opportunity. We're going to have plenty of opportunity to now apply these the next 3 days. And of course, my emphasis will be on using the tools and taking a different approach than the traditional one, which is that you go and memorize all these paradigm tables and the vocabulary and all the stuff that I failed all my primary school French class doing and didn't do so well in Latin either. I mean, I did okay, I passed. So we'll have opportunities to use modern technology then, which you can have on in your shirt pocket, I will show, as well as on your laptop, to just click your way into all of the grammar and know exactly what the original meant. Again, Koine Greek, super simple. English, complicated. Rules, exception to rules, style things. Koine Greek, mechanical. Straightforward, simple. Why? Because of Alexander the Great's conquests. They had to quickly make a common language. It's not like they divide. I'm not saying that they created a language, but or dialect. But it just came to be because of that rapid deployment of the Greek Empire. Not deployment of Koine Greek, but the deployment of the Greek Empire. The soldiers spoke Greek. Everybody learned this Koine Greek dialect very rapidly. And so all of the communication between all of these people who previously spoke other languages then are going to be made very simple by necessity. Okay, because people will have to communicate to one another among the Greek Empire, important political documents, governmental documents, diplomacy, you name it. And that's why it's all simple. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop the recording now. It's been almost exactly 3 hours. And we'll see you tomorrow for the session number 3.